Hello and welcome to the 13th episode of Pedz' Game Shack. I am back today with a new guest who has been on a different podcast with me when we did the GRK Twitchcast. He was a regular. He was there more than anyone else, I would say, other than myself. And that is Doomspoon.
Hello. He said that with almost like massive question marks following it. I kind of get why, because I've changed my name a few times now, and I use my real name these days of Ben, but I'm still generally, I think, referred to as Doom to kind of most people who know me in the gaming circles. So yeah, Doomspoon's fine. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, cool. I was like, what's he going to go with? I should have asked this before we started. Damn.
No, it's not a problem. It's nice to be here, though. I mean, it's been a long time, and we've had, we've talked about me coming on this particular podcast of yours before, and just with circumstances and with busy lives and that, obviously it wasn't able to happen, but luckily the kind of stars have aligned and I'm able to take part now, which is cool, and looking forward to it.
I'm glad you're looking forward to it. It's nice to see you. It has been a good long while since we both done something together. I haven't really caught you much in general because since you've changed jobs, you seem to be a lot more busy. I thought you'd been less busy with working like 9 to 5 instead of on and off kind of thing. But I don't know if you work 9 to 5, but you know what I mean. A more regular schedule.
Yeah, no, pretty much 9 to 5. Or, if you're splitting hairs, I suppose it's 7:45 till 3:45. But yeah, it's funny. I was in the same position as well. I thought absolutely I'm going to have more time. I think the job that I do now, I'm definitely busier. So although it's a more regular schedule, I don't have to work weekends anymore. Bank holidays I got off and all this, because I'm busier during my work days. I think I've been getting burnt out a lot more in terms of literal looking at screens, because when you've got to look at screens all day, the last thing you want to do is come home and look at more screens, I suppose. So So I've been doing that job now for just over a year, a bit longer, 14 months now, I suppose. But so and it's only been maybe the last kind of maybe 3 or 4 months where I've finally been able to start I've kind of grown accustomed to kind of that sheer amount of time being spent in front of a screen. And now, I've been able to start picking up kind of hobbies. The main one, obviously, is the reason why we're here, and that's gaming. It's taken a backseat up until the last few months. So yeah, I'm kind of making up for lost time. Funnily enough, I had my the email you get from Nintendo saying your year in gaming, and you could tell, it was there were like whole months that went past where there was like 0 gaming hours on them. And my most played game of this year is the game that we're going to be talking about mostly today, and that only came out a month ago. So a month today, actually, as far as I remember. So that kind of says it all. But certainly, I'm kind of starting to get back into the rhythm of things, and I'd like to think there's 2023. I'm going to try and make bit more of an effort and try and get some more game hours under my belt.
Yeah, that is totally understandable with the changing of job. Also, you've got a toddler now, I believe. So
I do. Yep, she's nearly 3. I keep referring to her as 2.5, but yeah, she's 3 in February. So that's
obviously going to drain you when you're home after work.
Oh yeah,
chasing around a little one. I remember
you don't miss those days.
No, I don't. In some ways I do, though, because when as they get older, the challenges are just different. It's not that they get easier; they're just different challenges.
Yeah.
So
I suppose things are a little bit simpler when they're younger, isn't it?
Exactly. You could just say, "Shut up, watch the telly," and they'll do that. And now it's like, "No," and then they'll go upstairs and play games and be quiet. So none of those things have ever happened. Like, but still, shut up and watch telly. Okay.
Still waiting for the day.
But right, we're here to talk about games. And we do 3 segments. The first segment is currently playing, where we'll discuss the games we are currently playing or have recently played. Top news, where we'll talk about not so much like the biggest news, but the news I find interesting or that kind of resonates with the subject that we're going to be talking about, and that is what the news is going to be about today, to be honest. And then we have We Play Together, which is a segment in where we will talk about a specific game that we have both been playing, specifically for the podcast. Well, not specifically for the podcast this time, but usually it is for that reason. This just happened to be that it was we were both playing it anyway, and I think it was you who actually said, "Do you want to talk about it?" So I was like, "Yeah, definitely."
I thought because as I mentioned, we had talked maybe a couple of months ago about taking part, but again, I was still kind of in that stage of only just getting back into the swing of things with gaming. So I didn't know how much time I could invest into playing a game specific for this, but obviously with the game that we'll be talking today, this is the one game that I will clear my schedule to kind of play, or at least to experience, at first. So it just I suppose made a lot more sense to be able to talk about this, because this was always going to be the game that I was going to make sure I was going to be able to put some kind of good hours into.
Yeah, that makes total sense, knowing your history with the game series.
There is, yes, I do have. There is a history there, isn't there?
Yeah. Right. So we'll start with currently playing, and I would like to know I'd like to know you. I'd like to know.
You have to buy me dinner if you want to get to know me more.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, what are you currently playing?
Well, I suppose we might as well talk about the thing that, the thing that we're going to elaborate on later, but the kind of elephant in the room, I suppose, because we've been dancing around it. The game that I've been playing the most recently has been Pokémon Scarlet in particular. That's taken up a massive portion of the last month's worth of kind of gaming. It's we'll go in, we'll kind of, that's the point of the kind of segment later on. So that's what I've been playing a lot of recently. So that's kind of dominated that for the last month. But before then, for the first time in, where are we? Probably, where are we? 2022. It's probably about 5 years now. First time in about 5 years, I decided to play a FIFA game.
All right.
I up until up until about 4 or 5 years ago, I'd get the FIFAs every year and play them. I had friends, we do pro clubs together and everything, which was pretty cool. And yeah, just kind of that pool of people that I used to play with kind of started playing other things and weren't so interested in that, so went away from the series, I suppose, or from the franchise. But this year I decided to pick up FIFA for the Switch specifically, which I think people tend to question that decision quite often, because the problem, I suppose you could say, with the version of FIFA that we get on the Switch is it's known as the legacy edition, which is essentially the Xbox 360 version, basically, so there's no real changes. It's essentially just update the teams, update the kits, and back out it goes, but I just really like football games, and yeah, I just had a hankering for it this year. In particular, it's been, like I say, 4 or 5 years since I played one. I probably won't get next year's one, for instance. I'll probably end up giving it a few years and then getting another one. When the teams have kind of changed enough for me to kind of justify getting it again, I suppose. And the reason why I get the Switch one in particular is genuinely, it's just nice to have it portable. I know you don't get the new engine and all the fancy stuff that comes with the Xbox version, the Xbox and the PS5 version, but I am willing to trade all that for the convenience of the hybrid nature. Being able to just grab it, go downstairs, sit on the sofa and play, and yeah. Do you know what I mean? So so there's that. Which it's been nice just to all I don't do anything fancy. I just jump in, start a career, jump on as Cardiff City, and just try and make them the most the best team in the world essentially. Set them up with tons of good players, get their academy going and all that. And once I've done my bit and they're flying, I kind of leave that club and go and do it to another one, and that's that. So it's a game that I think overall over the course of like the year, I'll sink quite a lot of time into it. So because I can just dip in, play a few games, dip out. So that's great. So that's been kind of a nice kind of a revisit, I suppose, for me. I have also been playing games that I suppose I never knew how to describe them. I basically just said, in the past, I've always just described them as Stardew Valley-esque games. Yeah. And what I mean by that is what I've realized now is they're actually called cozy games. So games where they're super duper chilled. They're usually quite trying to think of the word.
Games like Doom, is it?
yeah, exactly.
Cozy games,
nice
rip things up, shoot them.
Just really kind of humble games, and ones that you can just cozy up with, and rip throats out of demons. But no, just games where they're super chilled. There's no kind of there's no wrong way of playing them, I suppose. It's just that the point is you can kind of relax into them. And
I guarantee you there are people out there who will say there is a wrong way to play them.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure there is. And the best thing about it, some of these games have actually developed competitive communities. Stardew Valley being one. This year, so this year, they hosted the very first competitive Stardew Valley tournament, and there was it was put on by Concerned Ape, he's the creator of Stardew Valley. He put a prize up of, I think it was about $5,000 for the winner. Full on tournament. It was so. So even cozy games can get competitive now, but yeah. So these particular kind of cozy games, I'm kind of using air quotes for that I've been playing, are ones that have actually been released kind of this year on the Switch.
Okay.
And one of them is called Wylde Flowers. That's Wylde spelt Wylde and then Flowers. It's essentially you play as a young woman called Tara, I suppose.
Tara. We would say America would say Tara.
Yeah, Tara. Yeah, so Tara, and essentially it's just you kind of you kind of find yourself on this in this town, which is on an island, and you're visiting your grandmother basically, and after kind of you meet the townsfolk, you speak to your grandmother, and the first thing about this game is it's all 100% voice acted.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that was like one of the big selling points of this game. It's been out on Apple Arcade. I think it came out on Apple Arcade earlier this year. I think it was like February, March time, and then it was released on the Switch a few months ago, say 3 months ago, 4 months ago, maybe September. Apparently, I've just looked at it on Google. It says September, so there you go. So it's fully voice acted, which it does add to it. I've always been one person who's not been really that bothered about voice acting. Possibly because I've always played a lot of retro games, and you don't tend to get a huge amount of voice acting in them. So, but I gotta say, it is a nice touch. It's a nice change to the usual format, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, and graphically, it's actually a really nice game. You know, it's not the pixelated style like Stardew Valley, for instance. It's not that pixelated 2D style. It's fully 3D. It's like full 3D. And yeah, you know, there's loads of detail in the world, and the general aesthetic's really cool. And essentially, you, without giving too much away, because there is a kind of story to it as well. But you can do your usual. There's farming to do. You can, you know, there's crops. You can go mining. You go fishing. You develop relationships with the townsfolk. That can eventually turn into you getting involved with, if you want to, kind of actually forming a specific romantic relationship with certain people in the town who are kind of already single. So again, nice touch if you kind of just wanted to generally immerse yourself in something that's generally quite kind of just, you know, super chilled and just something you can get lost in without thinking too much about it. But yeah, and essentially you kind of realize that Tara is she comes from kind of a family of witches, and she kind of discovers, so it's quite cool, and she kind of discovers through her grandmother that actually she kind of has the it's a bloodline thing, and she can do it as well, and so it kind of goes from there. I haven't completed the story bit yet, so I'm kind of still working through that. Again, Pokemon kind of took over. But yeah, that's been a really cool game. You know, it's full 3D rendered. It's fully voice acted. It's I got to say, the characters as well. They're not. I wouldn't describe this game as cutesy.
Right.
It's not, you know, like I would describe Animal Crossing as cutesy.
Yeah.
This is quite. I don't know. It's just it's kind of, I say it's just not cutesy, but the, you know, all the characters are interesting. They're not all kind of they don't all follow like one format. Is that they're all quite different, and they're all, you know, they all kind of represent a different type of person in society, I suppose, as well. You know, which is quite cool. So yeah, so that's been a pretty cool find. Which might get some more playtime over the kind of Christmas period. Now that we're kind of leading into it, I've got one more week in work. So 5 more days, and then I'm off for 10 days then. So I'm hoping to try and get some game time in. So I'll probably revisit this. The other one that I've kind of dabbled in is another one called Bear and Breakfast.
Oh, I remember you tweeting about Bear and Breakfast, and it was something that I think I saw in like a game reveal kind of thing and talked about it. It looked pretty interesting. I think it is a very similar kind. You're running a hotel or bed and breakfast, but you're a bear and everyone's a human or something like that. So it's like really weird.
This game, so this is kind of that more. It's kind of, I wouldn't say necessarily top down, but it's kind of isometric-esque, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know
it's
what
not true isometric, but it's from that more bird's eye perspective, but it's not just seeing the top of their head. You know, you can still see them.
It's on an angle. I forgot the word for it, but you know, I know exactly what you're on about. And art style wise, I believe it's all fully drawn. There's not fully drawn, like nice.
Yeah. So this is very 2D. It's fully drawn. You know, really loads of kind of character, both in the artwork and in the characters. This isn't voice acted at all.
No.
But I would say that this is like super quirky, really fun, quirky. Like you end up. Some of the characters, you're reading their dialogue and like you actually laugh out loud because you're like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that reaction, you know. So yeah, it's full of character. It's really fun, and yeah, you're a bear, who, I mean, basically just stumbles across a shack basically and decides to himself that he wants to earn some money, and he decides to turn this thing into, using his animal friends, he kind of turns a place into a bed and breakfast, and humans start turning up, and yeah, obviously money starts flowing, and there are, I think off the top of my head, there are 5 bed and breakfasts eventually that you operate, each one of them being bigger and better, and you can upgrade them further and things like that. But obviously with that, they keep you busier, but you've also got to make sure you can manage all the other ones so they're not falling behind. So yeah, so it's a proper like a yeah, it's obviously not like a simulation game, but like a business management game essentially.
Yeah, like kind of like a theme park and that, is it? But with and theme hospital and that. Yeah.
And it's quite cool because when you first open the bed and breakfast and people start turning up to it for the first time, they kind of roaming around the general wildlife around, and if they see you while you're just going about your business, basically, they're like, the look in their eyes are like suddenly looks really panicked, and they start walking really quickly away from you. They don't run, but they're just kind of like, oh my god, get out of there, and they kind of panic walk away from you. But then as the bed and breakfast becomes more and more popular, starts getting better reviews and things, people start getting used to seeing a bear around all the time, and they act kind of quite normal around you then, which is quite cool as well. But it's super quirky, really super quirky. Genuinely, the dialogue in for some of the characters especially, you will laugh out loud just reading it, because you think, oh, that's some really good like character building and script writing there, you know. But yeah, and if you like that kind of business management game that's just really well like drawn, yeah, you'll love it. It's been really cool. So I've dabbled in that. Again, something that I want to go back to, and I will. And again, the good thing with these types of games, these cozy games, is you can just dip in and out. There's no obligation. If you only got 5 minutes, you can put 5 minutes into it. If you've got 5 hours, you can put 5 hours into it. There's no obligation to stay. There's no obligation to go either. You know, it's kind of up to you. And
yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, sometimes it's nice to have that to fall back on. You know, so yeah.
Yeah,
so
the perfect pick up and play game. You know, just jump in, like do a day on there, and then it's like, all right, I'm out of time. Let's go and do whatever it is you got to do. But I completely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, so yeah, that, FIFA and Pokemon have been the things that have dominated my playtime. They were all on the Switch. The Switch is really this year, as I said, obviously my playtime has been limited, but the Switch has dominated the playtime that I have had this year, and I can kind of see it continuing to do so, because again, at the end of the day, when you just want to chill and I don't necessarily want to sit in front of like a TV as such, and I want to jump on a sofa, I can grab the Switch and do that. So yeah, so I think going into 2023, that'll be the same as well. The Switch is going to dominate my playtime, I think.
Yeah. Well, there you go. If it's easier, like for me, the Switch is never undocked. It's always in the dock. Because I'll just play on my TV if I want to play something. But for people who can make use of the hybrid nature of it, then it makes total sense that it's going to be the most played console in comparison to something where they might not be able to have access to the TV all the time, or might not want to use the TV and just sit with some headphones on and play quietly in the corner on the Switch. I completely get that. It's but it's just not for me. I'd rather just use the TV. I
mean, it helps as well that I have the OLED Switch as well, and I have to be honest, I got it towards the beginning of this year. I kind of got it for like February, March time, and as you know, there really is a big difference between the regular Switch and this one in terms of even though it sounds like 6.2 for the regular Switch and 7 inches for the OLED, that makes a big difference. But the image quality with that OLED screen is light years better than the LCD screen. So I would say for me, I'm a 50-50 player. I 50% of the time I would say I'm docked. The other 50% I am handheld. And when you are handheld, that experience is genuinely improved by the OLED screen. So it is, if you're spending any like 50% of the time or more undocked, if you can, or if you think that's how you're going to be playing and you haven't got a Switch yet, go for the OLED. It really does make a difference.
Yeah, I remember. I think it was the Vita had an OLED screen, and
the first Vita did, yeah.
Good fucking screens before they decided to remove it.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the problem, isn't it? They needed to reduce the cost, and they pulled the screens out. But yeah, those are OLED screens. They are stunning, and yeah, I think and any future handhelds, I think that's going to be the kind of standard from this point onwards.
Yeah, should be because it is a genuinely better screen, but it's more expensive. That's the biggest issue, isn't it?
That is, yeah.
Because obviously the cost will be put on the consumer then, and who knows by how much.
Yes,
this screen cost us £10 to make, charging you $700. Obviously, I'm taking the piss. I don't think a screen would cost out £10, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
How would you compare Wylde Flowers to Stardew then, from where you've played? Because you said they're very similar kind of games in the sense of its farming and stuff. How do they compare? Which do you think you would play more than if you had, like, an hour sit down? You got choice of Stardew, you got choice of Wylde Flowers. Which one do you think you'd go for out of the two? Or even you can even include Bear and Breakfast.
Bear and Breakfast, yeah. Where Bear and Breakfast doesn't have the farming element, it still has that kind of life management type of thing. So I would say they are all very, very different games to each other. Wylde Flowers has probably more similarities in its function to Stardew Valley, but graphically, obviously, they're wildly different. Pun intended, by the way. I think anyone who knows me knows that I also have a history with Stardew Valley. And they know that I've been quite passionate about that game for quite a few years, and I genuinely think I've contributed to probably a fair portion of that game's sales on the Switch. But I think I've convinced off the top of my head, I know I've convinced at least 7 or 8 people to buy it based off just my sheer kind of passion for that game. If I had to pick one, I would still... Yeah. The Stardew influencer. I would go with Stardew, only because with Wylde Flowers, the one criticism I suppose I could give it is the farming element, which is the bit that I like. I like the fact that you can grow a range of crops, and you can kind of you almost can turn it into a business, which kind of you can start to really like dedicate certain things to your farm, and yeah, I don't know. I like the range. I just find Wylde Flowers, the farming is a little bit more. I don't want to use the word unnatural as if any of these things are realistic, because none of them are. But I definitely say, Stardew Valley's kind of farming system is superior, because it's kind of true, like plowing fields, planting your crops, watering them. Where and just how long things take as well. I think generally it just flows better. Where I think because the farming element of Stardew Valley is a large part of that game, where the farming element of Wylde Flowers it takes more of a backseat. It's kind of a means to an end rather than something you can do as a main task. If you want to jump on Stardew Valley and just plow a field and
we all love a good
put
bit
a load
of
of seeds in. Yeah, yeah. Well, you got to. Then you can do that, and the game will allow you to do that, because a large portion of that game is kind of based on that. Where Wylde Flowers, it's a bit clunkier, I suppose. It's not quite as fluid. So just for that alone, I would go with Stardew.
That's fair. But you didn't really say about Bear and Breakfast. What's the farming like in that?
So Bear and Breakfast doesn't have a farming element at all in it.
So it's not as good then for that reason.
Yeah, exactly. No,
so unrealistic, the farming in it.
Yeah, the fact that you're a bear who is self-aware, a self-aware bear, if you will, is not the thing that takes it away. It's the lack of farming. No, but that game, I would say it. I try to think of the best way to describe it. So essentially, when you've got the first couple of like bed and breakfast running, and you can kind of move between them, things are pretty relaxed, and it's kind of easy to keep on top of. When you start opening your third, your fourth, your fifth one, even though it's still relaxed, you can still do things in your own time. The management side of it becomes a little bit more complicated, because you're having to keep up with 5 of these bed and breakfasts, rather than just 1 or 2 by that point. And it's not stressful at all by no means, but it certainly adds to a complication. And for these style of games, I look for
something a bit more chilled,
yeah,
more relaxed.
That doesn't change. Yeah, but that doesn't change the fact that, as I said, that game, Bear and Breakfast, is so quirky that it is fun. It's fun. It's fun more than relaxing, I would say.
Yeah.
Whereas Stardew Valley is extremely relaxing, and then I would say Wylde Flowers is more engaging than relaxing, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I get you. That's fair enough.
Fair. I hope that helps.
That does
help.
I've
rambled.
Oh, you haven't rambled at all, man. You've give us some information that we asked about, and by we I mean me. Aye. $30 minutes, so I think it's time to move over to top news.
Sounds good to me.
The news that we're going to talk about today is going to be about Ash Ketchum, which kind of, I don't know if I would have talked about it generally speaking, but because we talked about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, it'd be worth talking about for that reason. I might have anyway. Yeah. I can't say I wouldn't, and I can't say I would, but I thought, because it kind of leads into Pokemon, it'd be good to talk about it. Basically, for those who are unaware, which I doubt there's no one listening who is unaware, basically with Pokemon the animated show, I don't know if it's called Pokemon the Animated Show or just Pokemon the TV series or what. The Pokemon Anime has been going for 25 years, I believe.
It's a long time.
It is a long time. And Ash Ketchum, who is somehow still 10. Did I say Ash Ketchum?
Ash Ketchum. which I think that's the next character of Strokomon 2.
Ash Ketchum. Ash Ketchum has somehow stayed 10 for 25 years, which is pretty interesting, actually, that he didn't age. I believe that some people theorize that Mr. Mime is his father, which is why he doesn't age, because Ash is a Pokemon. Other people theorize that the events happen in like a year or two, because at one point he does have a birthday. But it's like he does one thing and that happens in a short period of time, like over a couple of months, and the next series over a couple of months, and so on and so forth. So it's over like 2 years, say. Which seems more logical than Ash's father being a fucking Pokemon.
and that raises some really questionable moral issues with his mother then.
It does. And also, Mr. Mime wasn't there at the beginning and came later on. So like bearing in mind Pokemon are essentially the animals of their world. Wouldn't that not be some form of crazy bestiality? Or because Pokemon are more self-aware than animals, is it? I don't know. Where I think that's a whole separate subject that you've got to be careful not to Google. Well, I'm not going to Google it, but if you think about it, if you were to have sex with something like Mewtwo is fully conscious being who can like talk and walk and do very much anything. So,
I will warn anybody, if they do decide to try and Google this, you will come across something called Strokemon. And well, I mean, if it was there that fateful evening when I decided to watch out of pure curiosity while on stream, obviously I didn't show what I was watching, but my reaction was, well, it said it all, really. We were trying to play Rocket League, I believe, weren't we?
We were playing Rocket League, we were playing Rocket League.
Jeff.
And then, me, you, and Jeff playing Rocket League, and then we stopped playing Rocket League, and you decided to do live reactions to that, and it was absolutely hilarious.
It was genuinely one of the funniest things I've ever watched, I've ever seen. Yeah,
same here. I'd be completely honest. I almost pissed my pants in laughter.
There's actually another theory that's been bounced around for a few years and that's that Ash is actually dead. Right. And that he's just living this out in like basically his own version of heaven. So the reason why this comes about is because I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head, and I'm sure somebody's going to actually me, which is, actually, I think you find. So I might get actually'd for this, but in the really early on in the first season, series, literally first couple of episodes, Ash protects his Pikachu from a Spearow attack from loads of them, dive bombing him, and he gets.
I think that's the very
hurt.
First episode, yeah.
Might even be the very first one. Yes, it was actually the very, very first one. Well, after that had happened, he then sees Ho-Ho flying overhead, and it drops a feather at him, at his feet. So the Pokédex entry for Ho-Ho, I'm not saying this verbatim because I can't remember it, but essentially it's you own people who see Ho-Ho, basically they've died. It's the only time you really see Ho-Ho is when you've died, especially when it leaves a feather behind. It's kind of a signal. It's basically suggesting that Ash has died, because only people who have died will get this feather, basically, and will actually see Ho-Ho fly overhead. So I'm butchering the kind of explanation, but that's essentially the gist of it. And basically the theory is that he's just living in his own version of heaven, which his own version of heaven is to become the greatest, the greatest Pokemon trainer of all time. And that's the theory for why he doesn't age, because he's in heaven, basically. There's a few more other reasons why to kind of support that argument. So there is that theory going around as well. Can you imagine, just on a slightly darker note, imagine if because there's a with Ash being around for 25 years. Can you imagine if the very last episode of of the series with Ash in, it's literally like it's interrupted at the very end with all you hear is clear, bzz, pew, you know, the noise of the defib things, and they wake him up, and he's actually been dead. He's been pronounced dead for maybe 3 or 4 minutes, but everything that's gone on in the anime is him. It is everything he's lived in heaven, you know, because heaven's time works differently to real time. You know, if you watch anything supernatural related, you'll, you know, that generally is an accepted thing. Like, but yeah, you know, so like all this stuff that you see like in the anime is just him living out basically his version of heaven. But in real time, he's only been dead for like a few minutes, and they're just defibing him and wake him up right at the very end, you know. But I don't think it's going to go down that way.
That would be awesome. Or it'll show a picture of Ash, and it'll be like his mother saying something, and then it'll zoom out, and it'll just be a coffin. yeah, like a eulogy or something. Oh, that'd be brilliant.
Oh god, that would can you imagine the childhoods that would destroy? Yeah. I mean, mine included. The thing
is like in one of the latest movies where they kind of rebooted the movies, Ash still gets a feather from Ho-Oh.
Yes,
but he meets someone else who also got a feather from Ho-Oh.
Yeah. So the theory is if he had died even in the reboot, maybe he's met someone else who's got the same like that's the same.
I'm
dream
sure that's what happens. They get the feather, and like one of them is gonna like they're trying to meet Ho-Oh again to fight Ho-Oh. Yes. And I think Ash does fight Ho-Oh and wins the battle. Well, I don't think it shows what happens with the battle.
No.
But even if he did win, he didn't catch it.
No.
So
he at least survives, I'd say.
Yeah.
It's a good way to describe it, but yeah, I think I can't remember. Have we actually mentioned about the fact that we're basically saying that Ash's story is coming to an end?
No, we didn't. We've been talking for like 10 minutes and we haven't got up. This is why we don't do podcasts, because we go on tangents for hours. The Twitch cast that we used to do, the G Arcade one, they go on for 3 hours because we'd start talking about one subject and end up doing 20 others.
There's a reason why I stopped doing these. I just realised. Yeah, there we go.
But yeah, basically that is what's happening. After 25 years, Ash's story is finally coming to an end. He has now become the Pokémon Master, which means he has beaten all other... Because, like, the one thing about the Heaven story is, right, is if it's Heaven was he wanted to just become a Pokemon champion, you would have thought he would have just won the very first tournament. Why would Heaven make him suffer? And lose to Gary?
To hell.
But basically from the first series onwards, like the first series onwards, he kind of loses each Indigo League kind of. He doesn't get to the Elite Four and he doesn't move on. Whereas in the Alolan series, Sun and Moon, or whatever the hell it was called, he finally wins, and then in the latest series, all the champions come together. I'm not sure if any other people come back to. I haven't seen the series, but they all come together to battle, and Ash ends up winning that. So he becomes the Pokemon Master,
the World
basically.
Championships, isn't it?
Yeah. So he's the Pokemon Master, which is like, where would they go with it? It's not like if they carried on with Ash's story, unless they decided to make Pokemon a universal thing. So Ash goes traveling the universe to become the Pokemon Master of the universe. Yeah. Right? His story's going to be, Ash is going to go battle this person who's new to Pokemon, and he's going to struggle, and it's going to be stupid, really. So I think realistically, this is the best way forward. Like a lot of people I've seen on Twitter saying things like, I don't want to watch the show anymore now they're getting rid of Ash. And I'm thinking to myself, personally, I think it's a pretty good idea, because there's not really much wiggle room with Ash now. He's achieved his biggest goal of becoming a Pokemon Master. He's gone through all the trials and tribulations of getting there. So they may as well move on to new people, which they are doing.
Yeah.
I don't know if like the thing I've seen is two people, a girl and a boy.
Yeah.
And they're going to be in the Paldea region. But I don't know if like one of them is the main character and one is like a side character. So kind of like when Ash was introduced, it was Ash, and then he met Misty and Brock, and they went along with it. So I don't know if one of them is Misty or Brock kind of thing, or if both of them are just going to be the main characters, and they'll stick with two of them from there on. But I don't know. It's interesting that they shunted Ash. I don't know they're not shunting him, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think the reality is you can't keep doing this over and over again because people will start getting bored. So although, to a lot of people who are kind of, my age, who grew up with Pokemon and like the anime series as well, obviously it's quite upsetting because it's like, oh my God, it's the end of an era and that. But they have to freshen things up. I think the biggest deal, and obviously they had to do it with Ash as well as Pikachu, is the fact that they are actually Pikachu's going as well. And I think that's a bigger loss because Pikachu has become the mascot of Pokemon. He was never intended to be. It was always going to be Marill originally. And I think at one point even Jigglypuff was meant to be...
I think Jigglypuff was meant to be here first, wasn't he?
Yeah, and then Marill didn't come out then until Gold and Silver. They didn't use the model straight away. And then Pikachu, just because of the anime, people fell in love with Pikachu, and that become and that become the mascot. So to lose the mascot, like, Pikachu is the probably the single most iconic cartoon character of all time. And I know, do you know what I mean? It's like, I know there's some iconic characters, but Pokemon is the biggest franchise of all time. So arguably, you could say Pikachu is the biggest mascot of all time, if you see what I mean.
I get what you're saying.
So to lose that is probably a bigger risk than losing Ash as such. But obviously, if Ash goes, Pikachu has to go. I think for me personally, it doesn't affect me massively because it's just, like I just don't have time to keep up with the series these days. I'll watch a few of the new episodes as and when. I'm definitely going to watch so there's an 11-part mini series coming out in January. Yeah. To round off Ash's story. And that's going to be like essentially it's just a farewell tour essentially. And then I think it was April from next year, that's when the beginning of the Paldea region will start with the two new characters. I think it has to come to an end eventually. I think maybe a nice way of doing it is because there's always been this talk of Ash will probably end up getting with Misty one day, and that's been like a big fan fiction thing for a long time. So I think that would be quite a cool way to end, is the very last scene of the last episode involving Ash is like, say, 15 years later or whatever you want to say, and he's grown up. He ended up marrying, say, Misty, just, because that's the fan, like giving the fans what they want. He's got a son who's now just turned 10, and he's just about to go and get his first Pokemon, and that's where they leave it. I think that would be a really nice way of finishing, and Pikachu's still there. He's Pikachu still by his side. I think that'd be a really nice way of finishing everything off.
Yeah, honestly, a lot of people are theorizing that, not theorizing, but I've seen a lot of people speculating that one of the new people are Ash's and Selena's kid from the series, and I'm like, okay, I don't know, because they look similar or something. I don't bloody know. I don't know if that'll be a thing. But do you know what it ends with Ash going to Misty, not in any romantic way or anything, but goes, "Here you go, I finally." Oh, your bike, and then gives her a bike back.
Yeah.
After he destroyed her in the first or second episode. First episode, yeah. Because she followed him around and said, "I'm not gonna go until you get me a bike." And obviously, she did leave after a while, but he never got her bike back. Then again, when they cost her millions of Pokebucks,
I mean, he's world champion now. I think he can afford a bike.
You'd think so.
Yeah. But yeah, again, in some way, that'd be a nice way to end as well. So I think there's a few ways they're going to do it. And as soon as I get an opportunity to watch those 11 episodes, I'm going to, because, although I haven't been able to keep up with the series over the last 25 years because, life gets in the way, we grow up and, our commitments change and, we have kids and things. But I distinctly remember watching those early episodes of Pokemon, and they were one of the things that influenced me to get into Pokemon.
I remember watching the early stuff. I used to get up early in the morning for school. Yeah. And it'd be on Sky One, I think. And I just watch it in the morning. Yeah, just watch it in the morning. It's like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. I'd watch it. And then go to school.
And that was one of the, I think the anime came out after the first few games, actually. So by that point, I was already into the cards. I was already playing the games. But, watching the series helped solidify my love of Pokemon in general, because it's the one thing that I've really carried through from my childhood. And it's the one thing, as I said earlier, when a new Pokemon game comes out, eligible to play it, even to the point where I actually took the day, like I think I had some flexi leave built up. So I took the day off to make sure that I could pick the game up and be able to sit down and play it. And I even said to my wife, I was like, look, she knows how big of a deal it is for me as well. Like, so
don't even speak to me Pokemon Day. That's what you said, didn't it?
Yes.
Get out of the house. You're not allowed back until
Take
tomorrow.
The child with you.
Pokemon Day.
I mean, if I had said it like that, it would be me out on the street. But as long as I had my Switch with me, I'd be all right. I obviously Sean knew about it as well, and I said, look, I'm not saying I'm going to disappear for the whole day, because obviously, we have a child, but I was like, look, you know what this is for me. And she's like, yeah, no, it's fine. So I had a good section of time that I was kind of allotted to be able to take for that, to kind of experience the thing on day one. So that was really cool. But yeah, so I watched the first few episodes and kind of followed it as much as I could. Seen episodes, obviously one of the big things as well for me is that first movie, Pokemon the movie. The first one that held, still even to this day, holds such a massive nostalgia trip for me that again, massive influence. And so I do want to make sure I can kind of finish that chapter of things by being able to keep up with these last kind of few episodes that they're doing now in the new year. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see where they go with it. They essentially they're going to have to figure out what the new mascot is, because I know Pikachu's always going to be the mascot, but for the purpose of the anime's got to figure out what they're going to do, like what Pokemon's going to take over from Pikachu, essentially. So hey, that's going to be an interesting thing to see.
It'd probably be something from the new generation. I don't think they'd use an older Pokemon. So
well, I know the two Pokemon that we've seen in the little kind of the little announcement is we've got Sprigerato, which is the grass starter, the cat, and what's his name? Is it Foquaco?
Something like that, yeah.
Which is the
Firecroc.
The Firecroc starter. So we've got two Pokemon there, so maybe they're going to be the mascots. Or they, I don't know. Maybe it's Lechonk. We just don't know. I'm sure.
It's probably something you need to evolve with a stone, so they can never fucking evolve.
That's a good point. Yeah. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see where they go with this. So, but yeah, no, I think it's kind of sad news, I suppose, because it's a 25-year era. That's a silver jubilee in relationship terms, isn't it? 25 years is silver.
We're finally getting a divorce from Ash, guys.
after getting our silver jubilee with him. I think onwards and upwards, I suppose.
Yeah. We've been going for nearly an hour. We've been going for nearly an hour already. We usually finish at an hour, but we haven't talked about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, so we'll do a bit about that. So let's move on to what we play together. The game, as we've mentioned, is Pokemon Scarlet or Pokemon Violet. I have Pokemon Violet. I believe you're Pokemon Scarlet?
Yep. So that
because yours go for the one with the worst Pokemon on the box. Do you know right? Before we move on to what do you think about it? Because I usually ask first, what do you think about the games? First things first, the legit reason why I went for Pokemon Violet over Scarlet is because the motorbike Pokemon uses its wheels instead of having wheels, and then uses his legs to run anyway. It's so unbelievably stupid that I could not, in good conscience, buy Scarlet.
Yeah, I get that, and I actually forgot about that.
But I don't like the running with wheels. It looks stupid. It's like having a car with wheels and then sticking arms on the side that it uses to run. It's like, what?
Yeah,
or a motorbike with arms on the side, and then it runs instead of using its wheels.
Exactly. You know, I actually forgot about that as well when I decided to go with Scarlet, and then when I started riding Coridon, I was Coridon, Coridon.
Yeah, I think
Coridon. I forgot about that. Yeah, so there was that moment when I was like, oh, I forgot about that. So it was a bit jarring at first, but I kind of got used to it. So the reason why I chose Scarlet was simply because the Paradox Pokemon, I really, really liked Great Tusk, which is essentially the ancient version of Donphan. I thought it just looks so cool, and so did some of the other ones. Roaring Moon looks really cool. I also really like the ancient version of there we go. My head's gone. It's the Fire Moth Pokemon. It's the Paradox version is called Slitherwing. But the actual Pokemon is called something. Volcarona. There you go.
Right. You know which one I really like? The primitive ones.
Go on then.
Screamtail.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's quite a nice design. Screamtail. It just, I don't know, it didn't stand out compared to the other ones. But I can't. It's not ugly by no means. You know.
I don't know why, but cool. Screamtail is ace. It's a fucking psycho looking Jigglypuff. How can you not love a psycho Jigglypuff?
Sounds like the name of a band if you were in the Pokemon world. Psycho Jigglypuff.
That's what I'm going to name my band.
Psycho Jigglypuff, there we go.
Yeah, I've got all the Paradox Pokemon from Scarlet because when I was playing there, Retrocora not Retrocora on Twitch, it's Twitch story on the Twitch story on Twitch, but Retrocora. He came into the chat and was talking and I was like saying, oh yeah, I need the ones from Sky. He's like, oh, I'll jump on now if you want and give you the ones you need that are exclusive to Scarlet. So I had them quite early on. So he gave me all the Paradox Pokemon from Scarlet, and he gave me one of each of the forms. So like a Larvitar. So I could then evolve it myself into Pupitar, Tyranitar, and that kind of thing. So you give me the first form of each one for me to do that as well. So yeah, I haven't got all the futuristic ones because of I'm just going around catching legendaries and picking up Pokemon I see on the way. I think I've got like 330 something caught, so I still need, and I want to finish it by the end of the year, when Shield came out. I did the same thing. I by the 1st of January, I wanted to get the Pokédex finished. Yeah. And
that's a cool challenge.
And I want to do the same again with this, but I also want to try and get Arceus completed because I want to get Arceus as well, and I want to get that done by the 1st, so I probably ain't going to. So, you know, I'm going to focus on Violet first, though, because, Anyway, What do you think of the games?
So this is the first game where we've got true kind of, I say true open world. I mean, the reality is it is a true open world type of experience.
Mm-hmm.
Initial thoughts, I like it in theory. I think this is, this is what we've been building up to. I think it's been very obvious that this was the point. If you look at what Sword and Shield did with the wild areas,
Yeah.
that was, and I said this from the beginning, even when the wild areas first came out, and everyone was slating them.
I agreed with it at the time as well.
Yeah, man. I think we probably talked about it on a Twitch cast or something along those lines.
No, we did. We did.
Yeah. And the point was, this was clearly a beta test for doing something bigger later on, and we saw that in the DLCs. They kind of we had the Isle of Armor for Sword and Shield, which was a bigger open area, and then we did the Crown Tundra, which was a bigger open area again, and they had a small town. So this was all. And there was loads of caves to check out. So that was them really testing the waters. Then Pokemon Arceus came out, and that was them going, right, let's just lean into this fully. Let's see if we can get a game to work in that open world style, which they did. And then they went, right, now we know it can work. And that's kind of, where we're at with Scarlet and Violet. So this is definitely what we've been waiting for. And it was the natural progression of where Pokemon was going. I actually think I prefer Sword and Shield over Scarlet.
Oh, right. How come?
I think I'm still. I think genuinely it's because I'm still adjusting to the big change. I love the fact that we are open world. I love the fact that you can basically go anywhere and Pokemon are just there getting on with their day, and you can just ruin their day by either knocking them out or catching them, so I like that. I like the fact that there's people walking around, and I like all that. I like the fact that you can just the towns are just there. You can just walk in, walk out, and you can, there's no break in what you're doing. However, it's I think when I say I prefer Sword and Shield, I think it's because the sacrifices have been made to make this work, and I understand why, because they have, this is the first mainline Pokemon game to fully lean into open world, and so all of their resources, or a large portion of their resources, would have been to make sure that this, I say this works. I know it's had glitch issues, but overall, the game works, and that was their main focus, is putting all that into that. But the trouble is, I actually feel like the game has lost its charm. It's lost, charm. That's the best way I can describe it. It's lost its charm as a result of gaining the open world side of things.
Right.
Big example of that. I really, and this is something that genuinely I didn't think it would bother me that much, but it's something that I've genuinely found quite jarring, and I'm still struggling with it even after 45 hours put into this so far. The Pokemon centers are atrocious, in my opinion. I hate them.
Yeah, I can see
quite
a few people dislike them. I do prefer the traditional style Pokemon centers, but I don't think. I think they could have put the traditional Pokemon centers in the game and still been open world. You have plenty of open world games where you go into a building and it'll load for you to go into the building. Yeah. So they could have still done that. I don't know why they decided to go for this weird kind of petrol station-esque Poké Center.
Honestly, it's atrocious. The Pokemon centers, as if you look at all the games, they all have their own character to them. The building has its own character to them from the very first games. You saw how they developed, but they became a part of the region.
Yeah.
You know, the style of that Pokemon Center become a part of that region, and like the actual like the style of building, like this just looks. It just looks so corporate, and that's a good way to describe it. It's just come to me corporate.
I do wonder if they went with it, because it kind of does remind me of like a petrol station. You pull up and you fill up your petrol, and but I'm wondering if they thought it kind of works with the motorbike Pokemon you've got. I'm only now thinking that though, but I don't think they would have thought that. So maybe I'm just giving them too much credit.
I think. Yeah, so that is genuinely something, and I genuinely can't believe for my own sake that I've found it so jarring, but I have because, as I said, the sacrifices that have been made to make this game open world means that they haven't developed basically any indoors for any building apart from the building that you literally start in, your own home, and extremely and literally like, well, the entrance to all the gyms. Again, all the gyms are just big grey blocks that are just stuck in a town. They have no
personality.
There's no personality, and that's what I mean. Is the sacrifices that have been made to create an open world Pokemon game means that you've lost quite a lot of that charm. Like I said, the Pokemon centers have been turned into petrol stations basically, and they're very corporate looking, and they're not in keeping with I just hate them. I really do. The gyms are just literally big grey blocks that are just stuck in a town with no, like in the past, like the gyms, I mean, if you're looking at the really old game, like the original games, it was a building that said gym on it, which, but as time went on, those became more, they were, obviously as systems got better, they were able to kind of integrate the gyms into towns, and the towns had an individual theme, which the towns in Scarlet and Violet have themes. So why couldn't they integrate the gym, the exterior of the gym into the towns? I
get what you're saying. I do wonder, like, I don't know if the open, like, in theory, being open world shouldn't have that kind of effect where they kind of dumb things down. Like, I think they needed more time on the game personally to implement things. Normally the games coincide with the show, but the show isn't. The Paldea show isn't coming out until next year, so the game could have been delayed a couple of months to get things better. They could have done things like integrate certain buildings into the towns a bit better, and put some more window areas, make it run decent. I think that's the worst thing for me is the game. Like, I know people have had some crazy glitches. I haven't had too many glitches myself personally, but I have noticed the frame rate tank a lot of the times where it is fucking awful. Like, I've said the game is a fun game. I've enjoyed my time with it, but I can't overlook like Sword and Shield. There was a big uproar about certain things like textures and stuff, and that didn't bother me too much. And the game did chug when online mainly, and I found that with the DLCs, the frame rate's now improved. And RCS, the frame rate improved massively on that, like, it was still open world-ish. It was like semi-open world, and I really liked that. And I wouldn't have thought that going to this, it would have the same, like, would have such an impact on it. Like, you look at the game, and it's not exactly visually striking. It's not massively like detailed. Then it's quite simplistic in its look in comparison to something like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 or 3, which look really good for the Switch. I'm what I from what I
Even
understand
Breath of the
of
Wild.
3, yeah, even Breath of the Wild. But from what I understand of 3, it's Xenoblade 3. It runs pretty well for the most part. I think sometimes in docked, handheld, sorry, might not be as good. But like that is really impressive visually, and it is also a big open world game. So I wonder where Game Freak are going wrong when they've got so much money coming from the franchise. Something needs to be done, because from what I heard, from what I've read articles online, like this is the first time Nintendo said, yeah, we're giving refunds back for this game, and they've never done that before. I don't know if it was any games, or definitely with Pokemon games.
This is the first time they've ever done refunds for Pokemon games, I think everything you said is right, basically, or it seems to be. I think the trouble is, I think they've run before they've walked. Because if you think in the last 3 years, so 2019 when Sword and Shield came out, so between then, look at how big the jumps have been in how the open world has developed. So we went from Sword and Shield with a wild area, but for the most part, the game still ran based off of routes, and because and the towns were all still separated, so you'd still have to, you could have, pretty much like you'd walk into the big towns were separated, so there'd be a loading screen going in and out of them. The smaller ones, they were just integrated in part of the route, I suppose you could say, which is absolutely fine, because that's how Pokemon games have always been. The big towns are kind of separated, and then everything else is kind of can just work on the route. And then they introduced that wild area, which, yes, it was bare bones, but it was proof of concept. And you think, right, so that's 2019. The year after, well, less than a year later, so like the May time, I think it was, we then had Isle of Armor. So that was taking the wild area and just making it a bit more standalone. So it just took the wild area, it put more flora and fauna in, it put caves in, it allowed you to kind of swim around the ocean, put a bit more kind of life into it, but it was still a wild area, but it still had buildings that you could go into. And yes, there would be a loading screen to get into that building, but you would be able to walk into a building.
Yeah.
And it had an interior. It wasn't just grey, So there was that. But then Crown Tundra came out, which was just then another extension of a wild area, but they also incorporated a town, a very, very, very small town, which you could enter the buildings, and the buildings you'd enter without a loading screen, but they were very small buildings with one room essentially. But the point is, you could walk in them, they had an interior, and you could walk out. But ultimately, Crown Tundra was just a larger, more detailed version of what they'd done with Isle of Armor. But they're still wild areas. And then they went, right, we know this wild area concept works. So how are we going to introduce it now? So then what they did is they went to Arceus Legends, where you've got one hub town, which is separated from everything. So again, loading screens in and out. But because of that, the town was quite large. Jubilife town is quite large. Yeah. And you could go into basically all the buildings, and there are people dotted around, and, there's it again, aesthetically, it looks good. The inside of the buildings, I think they look cool, and that's fine. And then each individual place that you go to, it's its own wild area, but just turned up again compared to Crown Tundra. But it's not like you could go from wild area to wild area by literally walking. You kind of load into that one wild area, whichever specific region you go into.
Yeah.
And you can just do what you want in that area, and then do you know what I mean? Go back to town and then load back from town into a different area, and things like that. But the point is each individual one of these are just again turned. Their Crown Tundra wild areas turned up again. They just again adding more detail, adding more Pokemon, giving the Pokemon a bit more autonomy, I suppose, kind of make them seem more natural in environments and things, but they were still wild areas. And then they went, great, right, now let's go full open world. It's such a big jump. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think it didn't help that you had. I think personally, Sword and Shield coming out, then the DLC, then Arceus, then this, all come out in such a short space of time didn't help.
Yeah.
I think they needed a bit more time between the games to fully realize what they're doing. Because even Arceus, I call it Arceus anyway. I think it's RKS, but I'm not sure.
I call it Arceus.
Yeah, sounds better, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But basically, I think like that game even had its issues with frame rates and popping and so on and so forth. But it wasn't as bad as this game. And you'd think with this being the third game, I know there's Diamond and Pearl, but they were made by a different company, Shining Diamond and Shining Diamond, Brilliant Pearl. Shining Pearl and Brilliant Diamond? Well, either way, I don't know. Either way. The point is I think you would assume that by the time they brought out their third Pokemon game, they would, even though they've expanded on things, they would also be able to manage the hardware better to get a better performance out of it. Like, I'm not up in arms about it because, like, I did enjoy the game. I am disappointed that it ran so badly and it could be improved and not be so glitchy for some. Like, obviously, that's the problem with glitches is you're not going to constantly get glitches all the time, usually. Like, sometimes it does happen in games where you get the same glitches, everyone is getting it, but that doesn't seem to be the case in this, which is a good thing. But I've still really enjoyed my time playing it. I've streamed it. Like, I haven't played it offline at all, so everything that I've done on the game has been caught on camera, so to speak.
Yeah.
But generally, like, everyone who've come in and said, "Oh, how are you finding it?" And I've said, it's a fun game, but it's technically shite. And I don't mean technically shite in that, technically speaking, a shite. I mean in a technical terms.
Yeah.
By that I mean that its performance isn't great. It's like frame rate is a bit janky. Sometimes the visuals are a bit ropey. It's a bit plain. But at the same time, I had fun with it. And I'm a part of the problem. Like the problem, this is the problem. It's the biggest selling Pokemon game, I think.
Pretty much.
So, like, there's no incentive there. I think the only way for Game Freak to take a step in the right direction of improving things in a technical sense is their sales being hit. And unfortunately, that's not going to happen because people enjoy the games too much.
I think depending on how many refunds Nintendo had to give out, like, Nintendo were a major stakeholder in the Pokemon company, so they have a fair, they've got some serious clout when it comes to decision making. If they've had to fork out a fair amount of money on refunds, I think they're going to be having words with Game Freak and being like, right, this, you need to sort it out. At the end of the day, there is no excuse really for these technical failures because, Breath of the Wild was literally one of the first games that came out on Switch. And okay, you could argue that it's not as populated as what Pokemon is doing in terms of there is more going on in what compared to Breath of the Wild, in the sheer amount of wildlife and the interactions you can have with all this stuff. I get that.
Yeah.
But the reality is there are far more technically complicated games, like the Xenoblade games, for instance, that are running much better. So yes, people. The problem is that everyone starts going, "Oh, well, it's the Switch, isn't it? It's holding these games back." It's okay, all these games could technically run better, but that's no excuse for this Pokemon game. Absolutely not at all. And I think they have rushed it. I think they proved their concept with Sword and Shield. They developed on the concept with the DLC. They then said, right, okay, let's push the boat out even further with the wild areas in Arceus Legends. And then before what really what I would rather have them done is is split this map up into big open areas, big, large, really large wild areas. But the point is you have to, you can't naturally traverse through all of them just that like that. It's kind of, you've got to maybe fly to the town in that area. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? There's a way of doing it.
Basically similar to Arceus then, just the scale would be bigger on the, so like you've got different, you've got southwest, northeast, I don't know why I went in that, it said northeast, southwest, southwest, northeast provinces, so you've got those. I start with south because you start in the south, that's what it is.
Yes, you do, yeah.
Yeah, so you got those provinces, that may have been the way to have split it. I can understand why they've gone open world. I genuinely think they needed to promote. They just needed more time.
Yeah,
and with the Paldea stuff not coming until next. Yeah, that's the problem. Like from what I've read and heard, they generally have to, because of the other stuff in the franchise, the cards, the anime, and all that. The games have to be done by a certain point, so everything is coinciding with each other. Yeah, this one could have had more time if the new stuff isn't coming out until when? April, March, something like
that. April, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's not coming out till April, they had until April to put more time into it.
Yeah, I think as well. The problem is Arceus Legends got in the way because they, like I can, for them to jump from Pokemon Sword and Shield plus their DLC from that to what they've done with Violet and Scarlet and Violet even, that's a humongous jump. So the reality is in an ideal world they could have just gotten on with developing that, but the trouble is time and resources had to go into developing a further proof of concept in Arceus Legends. If they didn't have to, because that took time. If they didn't have to focus time and energy on building that, because that all that is a proof of concept further. You've got kind of your alpha, which is almost what Sword and Shield is. You've kind of got kind of alpha 2.0 in Armor of Vile and Crown Tundra. You've kind of got your beta test in Arceus Legends, and then they've gone right full release now in thing. The trouble is Arceus Legends would have taken a good probably year of development away from Scarlet and Violet because they had to make sure what they were doing is going to work. Yeah. So they had to, and that's the trouble is like they needed that extra, say, year's worth of development, or yes, the whole team probably wasn't working on it, but whoever was working on Arceus Legends, of which there would be a fair amount of people, I'm sure, they could have been working on Scarlet and Violet, but they couldn't because they had to make sure they had a beta version of what they wanted to do. Yeah. And that's what's hurt them, I think, really badly, is having to squeeze Arceus Legends in at such an awkward time, like, just squeezing it in the January because there's nowhere else for it to go. So I think Game Freak are under a huge amount of pressure because of the obligations. So there is that as well. My only hope now is that they are not going to need to keep on making those Arceus Legends type games. I mean, maybe in the future it'd be cool to see another one, like however they want to do it. I don't know how, but they could do something like that again, I guess. But it just, they don't need to worry about these things anymore. Now it's just a case of, because Pokemon have always got an A team and a B team. The A team do the mainline Pokemon games. So since the beginning, the A team did Red and Blue. Yeah. They then moved on to start developing Gold and Silver. While they're developing that, their B team developed Yellow in the meantime. So their B team did that. So do you know what I mean? You've always got that A and B team. So the B team are the ones who do the DLC. the A team are the ones who are doing the development for the next game. So the B team have probably been harder work now, getting the DLC ready for announcements and releases for Scarlet and Violet. And I would almost guarantee you that a large portion of the A team are already working towards the next generation already. I certainly can imagine that. And all you can hope for is, now that they've done this with the Paldea region, now they're like, right, it's not perfect. We were under a ton of pressure to get this out and to get it working. It's not right, but we know what needs to be done to make the next one even better and improve it further. We've now actually got time to focus on making sure it works. We can add detail. What I want to see is, I want that charm to come back, because the one thing I would say about Sword and Shield is they were inherently quite charming. Like they had that real English country vibe at the beginning of the game, and as you went through the game, I just feel like they encapsulated the region that it was representing really well.
Yeah,
in the same way that I think all, like, the Alola region did that as well. They've always captured the regions really well, and this game, like, this is meant to be based on Spain, I assume.
Yes,
judging by it. And yes, there are elements of kind of that influence, but there's not enough of it, And this is where, I feel like it's almost, Spain has also almost been done a bit of a disservice, because the game's charm comes from the fact that it takes inspiration from a real life place. And that charm is missing from this game, because they had to focus on making sure the thing was at least serviceable.
Yeah.
That's not going to change now. They can't suddenly do a massive reboot on it. So all they can do is say, right, the next game, which they're probably in early development for now, we can at least focus on making sure we get it working right and include that charm that's missing from this one.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. Still had a good time. I put 40 hours in. I'm not done with the game. I want to complete the decks. I will shiny hunt. I'm sure I'll have plenty. I enjoy doing the raids. I enjoy all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm still going to play that game. So yes, potentially I'm part of the problem. But there is a line between you just got to make sure that your constructive criticism and feedback of the game is heard, but you also still need to support the game to prove that it's worth improving on, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, it's hard to balance though, because if they like I said, if they making the biggest killing in sales, then there's no incentive there. It needs to, in a way, it needs to fall, but you don't want it to fall too much where they're like, right, we need to stop making this because it's not making money. So, like, how the hell you get that right? I don't know.
You don't know. There are people who are paid a lot more money than us to figure that one out.
Exactly. Right. We have been going for an hour and a half, which is longer than usual. So
I can only apologize.
No problem. I've had a good time talking to you. But we are going to call it an end here. We will be back, as in the podcast will be back in 2 weeks. It'll be a shorter episode with just me, because it'll be like, I don't know, just after Christmas. So I'm just going to pop in and say something about stuff. I don't know what exactly. And then the next episode after that will be in January sometime. And I've got 3 people joining me for that episode to talk about like Game of the Year and stuff. It's just going to be a little different to usual, because it's not going to be the same 3 topics with one person. It'll be 4 people having a chat. So yeah, that is going to be us. Is there anything you would like to plug?
I mean, if anybody would like to follow me on Twitter, I know Twitter's a bit of a sore subject for some people, including myself off air. Myself and Pedz were talking about it, but I am still active on Twitter, and that's where I have cultivated a bit of my little kind of hobby space. So that's like gaming, reading, Warhammer, stuff like that is kind of my little community that I'm kind of curating there. So you can find me on Twitter at BASainty, which is just spelt saint with a Y. Yeah, but other than that, nothing in particular. I'm not doing any streaming at the moment, but I'm sure when I am, I will plug it as much as I can. Okay,
I wasn't sure if you'd want to plug Metalladads.
Oh yes, just which is yeah. You know, if you are if you're a father, if you like anything kind of rock, heavy metal stuff like that, and you need a group, or you'd like a group who can offer some kind of holistic support, I suppose. I operate a father support group called Metalladads. We are based in Barry in South Wales. We meet up in person, and we also have online events. And basically, it's a group where we're just a group of dads who like rock and heavy metal. That's not a prerequisite. If you don't like that stuff, but you still want to join because you're a dad, by all means you can. You can find us on Facebook just by searching Metalladads. That's Metalli, so that's METALI dads. And yeah, you can find us on Facebook. You can send us a message, things like that. And yeah, you know, we're trying to tackle kind of the taboo subjects, which is men's mental health, while also trying to promote the fact that all metalheads aren't devil worshippers, because unfortunately there is still that stereotype. But yeah, so you can find us on Facebook mostly. That's where we have a private group for people to share experiences, and quite often we have a group of dads, 300 and we're nearly at 400, we're 390 something now, I think, members. And yeah, you know, we've got dads asking for advice about all sorts of things, you know, even relationship advice, you know, not necessarily just kids. And you know, we're sharing song ideas, sharing jokes, sharing memes, topics, films and TV comes up all the time. So yeah, there's always loads to talk about, and we're just trying to encourage men to talk a bit more, because let's be fair, I'd like to say we're not very good at it, but me and Pedz apparently have got it nailed. So, you know, but you know, overall, we don't talk. You know, men don't talk about their feelings, and we're trying to kind of encourage that a bit more, while not making you sit down and say, right, talk about your feelings. You know, you've got an opportunity to share music, interests in hobbies, what you're watching, and then as you get more comfortable, if you then want to share a bit more, then you've got an opportunity to do so. So yes, you can just search for Metalladads and it will pop up.
Thank you for sharing, and I will put a link in the description when this goes live, so people can just click that. Yeah, so that's going to be us. I would like to say thank you to Doom. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, it's been great. It's nice chatting with you again, and I certainly hope we can do this again sometime soon.
Yeah, definitely.
Sometime again soon.
Yeah, I get you. That would be cool, man. So, goodbye. Before we end the recording, right?
Yeah.
This is something I'm going to read you. I put it into an AI chat thing that gives you a little story or gives you information. I put in the thing I wanted was a 500-word story about Pedz and Doom talking about Pokemon games on a video game podcast. And this is the little 500-word story that I got. Okay. Pedz and Doom sat in the studio of their popular video game podcast, ready to record the latest episode. As longtime friends and avid gamers, they were always excited to share their thoughts and experiences with their listeners. Hey Doom, what do you want to talk about today? Pedz asked, adjusting his headphones. Well, I've been really into Pokemon lately. Doom replied, I just picked up the latest game in the series. It's been a lot of fun. Have you played it yet? I haven't had a chance yet, Pedz admitted. I've been a fan of the series for a long time. My first Pokemon game was Red and Blue on the Game Boy. I still have it somewhere in my collection. Oh man, those were the days, Doom said with a nostalgic smile. Remember when we would sit around for hours trying to catch them all? Absolutely, Pedz replied. It's still one of my all-time favourite games, and the series has only gotten better over the years. Have you played any of the newer games? Yes, I've played most of them, Doom said. I really enjoy the online features and the ability to battle with other players. And I love all the new Pokemon that they keep introducing. Definitely, Pedz agreed. It's always exciting to see what new creatures they come up with, and the graphics and gameplay have only gotten better with each new release. What's your favourite Pokemon game? That's a tough one, Doom said, rubbing his chin. I think I have to go with X and Y. The 3D graphics were a big step up from the previous games, and the new Mega Evolutions were really cool. Plus, the story was really engaging. I see what you mean, Pedz said. I really enjoyed those games as well, and I have to say the music in those games was top-notch. I still listen to the soundtrack from time to time. Agreed, Doom said. The music in Pokemon games is always really memorable. And I love how each game has its own unique soundtrack. It really adds to the atmosphere and sense of adventure. Absolutely, Pedz said. But what about the spin-off games? Have you played any of those? Yeah, I've played a few of them, Doom replied. Pokemon Snap was a lot of fun. It was really cool to see the Pokemon in 3D and take pictures of them. And Pokemon Mystery Dungeon was a really unique experience. It was like a roguelike RPG with Pokemon characters. Yeah, those were great games, Pedz said. I'm always excited to see what new ideas they come up with for the spin-off games. It's a testament to the enduring popularity of the franchise. Definitely, Doom agreed. Pokemon is a timeless classic, and with the recent release of Pokemon Go, it's clear that the series still has a massive following. It's amazing to see how far the franchise has come since the humble beginnings on the Game Boy. Absolutely, Pedz said. Here's to many more years of catching them all. As the two friends wrapped up the podcast, they couldn't wait to see what the future held for their beloved Pokemon franchise. And that's it.
That was riveting. I sat here in awe, listening. It was like we were sat around a campfire and you were telling us a story.
Yeah. What I should have done, right, for a laugh, was send it to you, highlight the bits you say and the bits I say, and then done that. But yeah, I did do a different one, but I didn't copy and paste it. I just left it on the AI page, and then the AI page somehow reset itself. I was like, so I had to go, because it did mention Pokemon Go, but it didn't say the recently released. It was like, we were playing Pokemon Go in a park.
Okay.
We talked about playing in a park and that. So yeah, it's pretty fun.
Is that a website then that has like an AI bot that will do this for you?
Yeah. It's called... I can't remember. OpenAI.com, chat.openai.com. Yeah, so you can put things like that in. Like 10-word story of Ash and Pikachu. 100-word. Ash was a young boy with a wild passion for Pokemon. His dream to become the world's greatest Pokemon trainer the world had ever seen. One day, while out on a hike, he stumbled upon a small electric mouse called Pikachu. At first, Pikachu was reluctant to be caught, but Ash's kind heart and determination won him over. Together, Ash and Pikachu travelled across the land, catching and battling all sorts of different Pokemon. They became the best of friends, and their bond only grew stronger as with each new event. So yeah, it does that kind of thing. To be honest, mentioning before we go properly, like where you said that Misty and Ash might, like, people assumed they would like maybe get together as the end. Honestly, I would see Ash and Pikachu getting together at the end as more likely to happen.
I mean, in some way, that would be a lovely way of finishing off the series.
In some ways. Not in a lot of others. But yeah, I thought I'd tell you that lovely little story that the AI bot thing wrote. And I didn't realise you loved X and Y. Nice to know.
Apparently so. It's news to me, but hey-ho.
Yeah, the one that I had originally said the same thing about you loving X and Y, but mine said afterwards, and my reply is, I think my favourites are Black and White. I love the fact that they reintroduced new Pokemon and stuff like that, and I wouldn't say Pokemon Black and White are my favourite, but Black and White genuinely did interest me a lot because it was like a reboot of the series, and I liked that. So there you go. Anyway, I'm going to let you go because you have work, and I'm also going to go to bed to get some sleep.